All right, shalom. We're going to be in the 39th chapter of the book of Ezekiel. Last week, asked if anybody had, or said if anybody had a midrash for the recorded message I sent last week that we would cover it this week. Does anybody have any midrash for Ezekiel 38 before we start on chapter 39? Okay, chapter 39 begins. And you, O mortal, prophesy against Gog and say, Thus said Yehovah Elohim, I am going to deal with you, O Gog, chief prince of Meshech and Tubal. I will turn you around and drive you on, and I will take you from the far north and lead you toward the mountains of Israel. Now, I've been doing some study on this week, and although the exact sites of Meshech and Tubal are still kind of debated by archaeologists, I still say kind of what I think I threw in last week in the talk, that I feel like Magog was probably a location in or around what is today Turkey. Okay, now that's not on our maps. That's not the far north, but at this time that would have been considered so far north that it was barbarian country. It also makes sense because this is a prophecy of a future time, and we're looking at a king who would rule over that area. And Turkey has at times in recent history been the proposed site for a theocratic government to unite Islam around the world. It's one of the proposed sites, is in Istanbul. And so it's not unthinkable that as we come closer into the end times, into the last days, that a world theocratic Islamic worldwide government for Muslims might be seated in that area. I will strike your bow from your left hand, and I will loose the arrows from your right hand. You shall fall on the mountains of Yisrael, you and your battalions and the peoples who are with you, and I will give you as food to carrion birds of every sort, and to the beasts of the field, as you lie in the open field. For I have spoken, declares Yehovah Elohim, and I will send a fire against Magog, and against those who dwell secure in the coastlands. And they shall know that I am Yehovah. I will make my holy name known among my people Yisrael, and never again will my holy name be profaned. Some important things here. First off, not only he, but all of his battalions will have their weapons struck from their hands. Okay, this reminds me, as I was reading it this morning, it reminded me of the passage in Exodus where it says that Pharaoh's chariots went into the sea. They went on dry land, just as Israel had gone on dry land, and then he caused the wheels of the chariots, Elohim caused the wheels of the chariots to be confused and to fall off of the chariots. And people say, how on earth could that be? And yet if you go down to the Red Sea and you go down in a submarine, you can find coral formations in the exact shape of Egyptian chariot wheels. So we know it happened. I knew it happened because the word says it, but archaeology has proven it. So something is going to happen along those lines where the entire battalions of Gog are going to be running, charging towards Yitzhak. And in the very mountains of Eretz Israel, they are going to drop their weapons. Maybe because they cease to work, because he won't let them work. Maybe because he forces their hands open and they fall to the ground. What an awesome, amazing thing it would be to see that happen. Secondly, he talks about when they die, they will be laid out, they will fall to the ground, and they will lay there, and the beasts of the field and the birds of the air will come and eat of them. And the churches talk about this great thing that they call the marriage supper of the Lamb, where all of the carnivorous, unclean beasts and birds will come and eat of the flesh of the enemies of Israel. But they say, oh, it's the enemies of the church, and it's the enemies of, the enemies of the Pope, or the enemies of whoever they're following. And they miss the fact that all that we read about in Revelation is a more detailed account of what Ezekiel was told to prophesy in chapter 39. And then he says in verse 7, I will make my holy name known among my people Yisrael. Now, in the last days, the name of Yehovah is to be spoken by the people of Yisrael. That is happening. Okay? Through scholarship, through studies of ancient texts, through close studies of the vowel points, through studies of Paleo-Hebrew, the true name, I believe, I think Nehemiah Gordon is exactly right when he says that the true name is Yehovah. And for generations, we were told as a people, don't ever try to say this name. It's sacred, it's holy. Okay? Nowhere in Scripture are we told not to say his name. That was a man-made tradition. Most scholars think it started because the Rabbim didn't want the Gentiles to be able to say it. Not a bad idea, but then they told their children, don't ever try to say this name. And after Nehemiah Gordon did all of this study, and other people in his group, and other groups, and historians, and researchers, and linguists, and they came to this conclusion, Mr. Gordon came to the conclusion that the name was Yehovah. Then he went around to hundreds of ethnic Jews in Israel, in the land, who speak Hebrew fluently, and said, if you had to guess how to pronounce the sacred name, how would you pronounce it? And almost every single one of them said, I've always thought it was Yehovah. By the mouth of 2 or 3 witnesses, all things can be established. Okay? For years, I believed it was Yahuwah. Okay? After reading his research and studying his videos and what have you, and understanding why he came to this conclusion and why so many others had, I realized that my interpretation of the Vav was incorrect. Okay? I believe that what we see happening, especially today in the Messianic movement, okay, what we see happening with the pronunciation of Yehovah in services around the world and in prayers in private is the beginning of this. When it says that his holy name will be revealed it says will be known among my people Yisrael. He was prophesying that there was going to be a time that it wouldn't be known. And how strange must that have sounded to Jewish people, Yisraelim at that time, Yahudim who knew the sacred name, who spoke it every day in their prayers, who heard it in the temple as they were growing up, or had. How strange must it have been to hear this? Oh, and the spectacular thing's going to happen. The sacred name will be known. How would that seem like a prophecy to them? Because the sacred name was known then. They didn't know that there was going to be an instruction given by the Rabbim generations later not to speak the name, not to write the name, not to use vowel points in the name. Only Elohim knew that. And the nations shall know that I, Yehovah, am holy in Yisrael. That's why he gave us the name back, folks. That's why he gave it to us, so that he would be known as holy in us and in the land when the Gentiles look to us. It has come, it has happened, declares Yehovah Elohim. This is that day that I decreed. Then the inhabitants of the city of Yisrael will go out and make fires and feed them with the weapons, shields and bucklers, bows and arrows, clubs and spears. They shall use them as fuel for 7 years. For 7 years, the weapons that are dropped by the armies of Gog that came from Magog will fuel the fires in Eretz Yisrael. They will not gather firewood in the fields or cut any in the forests, but will use the weapons as fuel for their fires. They will despoil those who despoiled them, and plunder those who plundered them, declares Yehovah Elohim. Remember the Abrahamic covenant? I will bless those who bless you. I will curse those who curse you. He says, I will plunder those who plunder you. I'm going to use you to do it. If they despoil you, I will use you to despoil them. And they will know that I am holy in Yisrael. On that day, I will assign to Gog a burial place in Yisrael. This is one of those passages that make me argue all against the idea that Gog is a country. He's called a prince. He's called a king. He's called a leader. He's called a general. Well, it says armies follow him. It doesn't call him a general, but demonstrates that he's in that position. But here it says that he is given a burial place. I don't believe that could be an entire country. I don't believe that could even be an entire city. It could be the army of an entire country buried there. But this specifically points to him being a man. Personally, I believe we're probably talking about the false Messiah. The valley of the travelers east of the sea, that's going to be where he's buried. It shall block the path of travelers, for there Gog and all his multitude will be buried. Okay, so the army's going to be there, buried there. It shall be called the valley of Gog's multitude. Beit Yisrael shall spend 7 months burying them, in order to cleanse the land. All the people of the land shall bury them. The day I manifest my glory shall bring renown to them, declares Yehovah Elohim, and they shall appoint men to serve permanently to traverse the land and bury any invaders who remain above ground. Okay, so that's going to be their entire job. They're going to send men out to search for dead bodies and bury them. That's how massive the death toll is going to be. In order to cleanse it, the search shall go on for a period of 7 months, and those who traverse the country make their rounds, any one of them who sees a human bone shall erect a marker beside it until buriers have interred them in the valley of Gog's multitude. So it doesn't matter where in Eretz Israel your body fell, if there is so much as a bone found. And isn't this a switch from the previous chapter where the bones came to life? And he says this is Beit Yisrael. If so much as the bone of a goyim is found laying in Eretz Yisrael, a marker will be set up and someone else will come and carefully collect it and bury it in the place that is set aside for that. There shall also be a named multitude, and thus the land shall be cleansed. And you, O mortal, say to every winged bird and to all the wild beasts, thus said Yehovah Elohim, assemble, come and gather from all around for the sacrificial feast that I am preparing for you. A great sacrificial feast upon the mountains of Yisrael, and eat flesh and drink blood. You shall eat the flesh of warriors and drink the blood of princes of the earth, rams, lambs, he-goats, and bulls, fatlings of Bashan, all of them. In other words, they got fat at the price, or they got fat at the cost of my people. They accosted my people. They treated my people badly, and they became fat like lambs. And now I'm going to slay them for you. You shall eat fat to satiety and drink your fill of blood from the sacrificial feast that I have prepared for you, and you shall say to yourself at my table with horses, charioteers, warriors, and all fighting men, declares Yehovah Elohim. They're going to satisfy themselves. They're going to be full. Thus will I manifest my glory among the nations, and all the nations shall see the judgment that I executed and the power that I wielded against them. You notice something? I know I've said this previously in earlier chapters. This isn't about us. We read the prophets and we think it's about us. It's only about us to the extent that he is using us to glorify himself. If we think that he is saving us because of us, we have missed the point. If we think that he is saving us to glorify us before our enemies, we've missed the whole message. We exist by his will, and we exist for his purpose. And the second that we think that he is doing for us, for our just because we're so great, we've missed everything. He chose us despite ourselves, not because of ourselves. He has loved Yisrael down through the ages, not because we deserve his love, but because his love is not dependent upon us. Yes, he loves us. Yes, he blesses us when we do right. Yes, he punishes us when we do wrong and brings us back to right. Yes, he does all of those things. Yes, he is an amazing Abba. But at the end of the day, we exist for his glory, that it might be shown to the Gentile. From that time on, Beit Yisrael shall know that I Yehovah am their Elohim. Okay? Does Yisrael as an entire body yet know that he is Elohim? The answer is no. Today, Eretz Yisrael is a secular state. And as much as I support Eretz Yisrael, there are some things going on there that are just simply not righteous. There are some things that are condoned there that are not of him. When this day comes and all of the Yisraelim know that Yahweh is Elohim of the fathers, those things will not be happening. And the nations shall know that Beit Yisrael were exiled only for their iniquity, not because he hated us, but because of what we did, because they trespassed against me, so that I hid my face from them and delivered them into the hands of their adversaries, and they all fell by the sword. When I hid my face from them, I dealt with them according to their uncleanness and their transgressions. So the whole world is going to know that when we were punished, it was because of us, not because of him. That's how it should be. Assuredly, thus said Yahweh Elohim, I will now restore the fortunes of Jacob and take the whole of Beit Yisrael back in love, and I will be zealous for my holy name. I cannot tell you how many times I have heard it preached or how many years I believed it, and it is an absolute false doctrine that Yehovah hates Yisrael. That Yisrael has been replaced by Gentiles grafted in. Yes, Gentiles are being grafted in. Yisrael has not been replaced. Yisrael has gone into exile and is being called home in love. Our transgressions have pretty much been paid for, and he is calling us home to the land. This day that he prophesies is coming. And it says that he will be zealous for his holy name. That's the holy name that we were told not to speak, and the way to pronounce it was pretty much forgotten. But today we know it. And today, Jews all over the world, if they care enough to research it, can know it and speak it and write it and pass it on to our children. So be zealous for that, he says. They will bear their shame and all their trespasses that they committed against me when they dwell in their land secure and untroubled, when I have brought them back from among the peoples and gathered them out of the lands of their enemies and have manifested my holiness through them in the sight of many nations. We will stand up and say, today we are blessed because we learned when we were in exile. Because we learned from his corrective punishment. Because he gave us love that we did not deserve. We stand here and you can stand with us. You don't have to be going. They shall know that I, Yehovah, am their Elohim, when, having exiled them from them among the nations, I gather them back into their land and leave none of them behind. Everybody get that? None left behind. That's how we know this hasn't happened yet. Because some of us are still in exile around the world. But every day, more and more Yisraelim make Aliyah and return home. Every day, long lost sons of Jacob and daughters of the tribes, they step off of airplanes in Tel Aviv and they kiss the ground and they thank our Creator for allowing them to come home to the land we were promised. But he says that he will leave none of us behind. Everyone. And this is one of those passages, like the passage that says that all of Israel will be saved in a day. And I think, how on earth can that happen? It can only happen through his power. How on earth can not one member of the tribe be left behind? Only through his power. But my Elohim parts seas and makes ways where there seems to be no way. And I don't know how he's going to accomplish this, but I know he's already started. I will never again hide my face from them. Isn't that an awesome thing? I will never again hide my face from them. Not I won't hide my face from them until they mess up again. I will never again hide my face from them. For I will pour out my spirit upon Beit Yisrael, declares Yehovah Elohim. People take that and they say, what? That happened in the book of Acts. When the church started. Has the Spirit, the Ruach HaKodesh, has it poured out on Beit Yisrael in the full, the entirety right now? Has the fullness of Beit Yisrael received the Spirit? No. And until that happens, this prophecy is not fulfilled. I don't care what church you sit in or what pastor tells you it has been. All means all. That's all means. He says not one will be left behind, and all of the house of Israel will receive his Spirit. I look for that day. I pray for that day. But today is not that day. Do we have a midrash?